name is Edith Yeung. I actually run head of marketing for Dolphin Browser. I'm not a developer, so if you want to ask me any coding question, just forget about it, because I basically will be the worst developer that you will ever hire. But I actually started my career as a developer, more like PL SQL, C++, just a long time ago, doing client-server stuff. But definitely not, no, I'm not the one that you want to hire. So at the same time, if you do have specific questions, I'd love to write down, give us your card. We will at least always get some sort of answers for any question that you have, but just not that sort of question. You can ask Don afterwards, or Alexander. Don't ask me. But having said that, thank you so much for coming. Today, particularly, is really about focusing on how, once we have an app, how do you actually acquire users? So the first question I have for everyone, how many of you actually have developed an app? Okay, almost everybody. Many of us are very passionate about building a product. We just love what we're building. But then at the same time, once you build it, you realize, well, wait a minute, nobody know about my app. I put all this effort in creating something that I just love. But wait, there's only a few hundred people download it. And on top of that, once they download it, they don't come back. What the hell, right? So it's sort of like you build something happened, and you expect, wow, magically profit. But at the same time, it's really about, especially for Android and iOS as developer, there's a lot of intricacy in marketing and promoting and acquiring users. So today, I want to share a little bit of sort of our story, how we got started, why we're doing all this, and some of the strategy and lesson learned that we sort of accumulate for the past 2 years or so. There's definitely a lot of different techniques and ways of growing and getting more users. And in terms of strategy, it's quite different when you first started versus now you're in a growing phase, and now we're at a different stage in terms of things that we need to do. So I'll focus a little bit more on launch, because I think most of us here have something, we just want more users. So I will focus a little bit more on that. But I'm more than happy to share any other ideas after the talks. But if you can actually hold off your questions till the end, that probably will be the best. All right, so quickly, what is Dolphin Browser? So we have about 10 million downloads. It's one of the most popular browser on both iOS and Android. We are the world's first gesture, webzine, and add-on enabled browser. What's that mean? I will share with you guys a little bit later on. This year, we also were selected as the #1 CNET top 100 most popular Android apps. And we've been very, very lucky. Actually, when we first started, for about a year and a half, there's no marketing. Doesn't even exist. So I've actually joined earlier this year, which I'll tell you a little bit of like what happened since I joined and what are some of the things that we did differently. But at the very, very early on, which I'll touch on that, is get the press know about your app is definitely very, very important. But I'll tell you guys a little bit about how we sort of position it, because it's not just about pitching. It's really about like the way building the relationship with different media. All right, so I want to sort of break down our story into 3 phases. I actually have tons of fun when I was preparing for this presentation. We found a lot of really funny looking. So this is a tiny little baby dolphin. First and foremost, Dolphin, why we named Dolphin is because so our founders, there's 5 of them, they're very hardcore engineers. So about end of 2009, they went to one of the Google developer events, and at the time, they were Android, probably about 8 months, 9 months old, still very, very new. And when we came up with the idea of Dolphin, it's only about 2,000 or 3,000 apps, so pretty early on. So we thought, wow, obviously there's stock browser that you can find on the phone, but we just felt like there's a lot more things that we can improve. So at the time, we thought, well, if you would just pick any name, which I absolutely think having a good name is a really important thing as part of marketing. So Dolphin, why we picked Dolphin, obviously is really cute, but also to go along with browser, right? You want it to be really fast. So Dolphin swim really fast. It's very smart. And more importantly, because it's so smart, it learned the way that you want to browse, which sort of explain, we have webzine, we have add-on. once you sort of install certain add-on, it's customized browsing experience. It's sort of like Dolphin. It sort of learned the way you want to browse. So that's how we came up with the name. But really early on, when we first started, it wasn't like, oh, great, we put this thing on the market, and all of a sudden there's millions of people. No, there was nobody. And in fact, for probably the first 1 or 2 months, we were like, what happened? But what we did a lot was we really took time to, especially like our team here, there's Joy sitting over there, she's in charge of customer service. Every day, like right now, we have 200 to 300 email every day. And every single one of these email we answer. So very early on, a lot of more technical community find out about us, and being technical, obviously sort of the same developer to developer, we get a lot of critical comment. But very early on, we really take our time and answer every single one of them and go back to the early adopters and say, hey, we fixed this. So when we first started, we still do it now, is answer every single email. And a lot of time early on, we actually did a lot of public beta. So once we did an update, we didn't really go to press first and say, hey, discover our cool app. Instead, we go to the users and say, hey, now, whatever that you asked for is fixed. Please help us, give us feedback and test it. So we did a lot of them. Almost every week, every 2 weeks, we have a new release. And we go back to them and say, hey, now there's another release. So we have a lot of core users that felt like they are building the product with us. And that was very, very important early on. Then we got in about 6 months in or so. I know you guys probably seen this so many times. I love to use this Starbucks analogy, which is, why do people pay $4 to buy Starbucks coffee if they can go to McDonald's or Dunkin' Donuts and pay $1, right? So our whole idea was that about 6 months in, we realized, well, we didn't want our app really, really heavy. Otherwise, it would be really slow. So we started thinking, okay, what can we do to allow to Dolphin way, right? So you can customize the way. So let's say you want the browser to remember your password, or you want the whole browser to translate this page from English to Chinese. I'm Chinese. How do you do that? So we didn't want to make the feature so heavy within the browser. So we created something called like the add-on. So like the desktop, they have plug-in for browser. We have a similar thing, but for mobile. So right now we have about 70 add-on or so, from password manager to Dolphin Translate or music player, to like save like a web page to PDF. There's many these add-on to make it a Starbucks-like experience. So I absolutely love, every time I go to Starbucks, I order non-fat chai latte. That's like my drink. And that's only Starbucks can do it that way. If I go to Dunkin' Donuts, they can't do the same thing. So I really have sort of felt like this is my browser that nobody else can replace. And in fact, this whole add-on strategy, we continue to build it. So about 6 months or so between that, for first couple of months, very little users. And then we slowly realized that early adopter really like us. And especially when we pushed out add-on. So in about 6 months or so, we hit our first million users. So from nothing to first million, and there's a lot of other things that we learned from that, which I will share a little bit more later on. Then now we are sort of, earlier this year, we decided we are fairly strong on Android now, so let's cross over and go to the iOS side. And for us, was actually a quite nervous experience, because then it was once again, we start with nothing. Like zero, like we didn't even know like who are the blogger that writes about iOS. Like we have no idea. So from then on, we have a completely different new strategy in user acquisition, which is we sort of, again, ask our user for help, but this time it's not product feedback, but instead we did some social media campaign to ask them for help to tweet and talk about us, which I will share a little bit more detail later on. So that sort of sum up like our story. Starting from 2009, we launched add-on about 6 months later, and in about probably 9 months, by June we were 1 million, and 1 year later we hit 8 million And we just actually announced, I think last month, we hit 10 million. This year, we also launched something called WebZine. So the idea of WebZine is basically, instead of mobile view, desktop view for most of the website, we actually have something called WebZine view. So you can look at TechCrunch really nicely with one finger, and you can look at each of the article. It's sort of trimmed down version of it, but it actually cached. So even though you have no 3G, 4G network or no Wi-Fi, you can still look at the content, which is a really, really slick feature. Nobody else is doing it. And early this year, we also got really lucky. Sequoia, we became the first Sequoia-funded mobile browser company. And then this year, also in August, we launched our first partnership with SoftBank, which is they're like T-Mobile, AT&T, but for Japan. So we did a partnership there. And then we also launched on the iPhone in August. And then we were selected as the most popular Android app for CNET. And also we just got another award from CNET for our Apple, for iOS version. So with all these, this is sort of like our timeline. But really, let's go back to sort of some of the lessons learned. So I actually break it down to 7 lessons, because 7 highly effective people. So 7 is a good number. So we're going to start with that. So first thing first, who can tell what is this phone? Okay, first, G1, that's right. So this is almost like the first publicly launched Android phone, the T-Mobile G1. And why do I actually pick this phone? Because I think there's something to be said when you are the first of something. And obviously now we're hitting about 300,000 Android app on the market. There's a lot of apps we're talking about. But still, I think everything. I mean, we definitely are not the first browser, right? And there's tons of other browsers. There's stock browser, which is our biggest competitor. So how you compete with that? Because you come with the phone. But at the same time, I think everything we do, in addition, doesn't matter if it's browser or not, whatever you guys are building, there got to be something, like one of your features that is first in the world of something. And the reason I said that is from sort of for creating a brand and from a marketing angle. If you're saying, oh, a lot of people in the Valley always like to say, hey, we're the Foursquare of food, or we're the Twitter of for sports. And the first thing people will remember is the Twitter and the Foursquare, not your app, right? So a lot of times that we all need to think about what about your app that is the first of everything. So so for us, right, when we first came out, okay, we have better experience. We support multi-tap. But all these is not necessarily new, but gesture was new. Like you can draw a little heart, you go to Match.com. Like that sort of thing is new. But it's funny enough, our development team, they actually didn't care that much about gesture. They were like, oh, it was like to them, from a development effort, it was like, oh, it's just another feature out of 100 features that we have. But when I saw it, I thought, wow, this is so cool. But it was cool from a branding point of view. Because sometimes I think all of us are so passionate about everything we do, we sort of like stuff it in everything, but we sort of lost focus. It's sort of like, why do people buy iPod Shuffle? There's no button. There's only one choice, to listen to music. So think about if you're adding more feature to your app, how can you add one but take out 5? And more importantly, when you add another and more, which one that is not the feature that is important to you, but the feature that's important and memorable for the user? So for us, we were the first browser that actually launched the whole add-on concept. So if you look at our browser, on the right-hand side, so we have the right sidebar, so you can see things like Wikipedia that we specifically created, Translate, Password Manager, all these. So once you download it, it sticks on the right sidebar and it stick with you the whole time as a Dolphin user. And then if you want more, you can pick all these from the market as well. So we created all of these for the fact that, wow, we're the first one ever supported this. And on top of that, it helped us with partnership, which I will tell you guys a little bit more in terms of strategy, in terms of user acquisition. Also, we were the first one, as I mentioned earlier, you can pretty much customize any gesture you want. So let's say like the next time I draw a S and it will go to the San Francisco Android user group. Or let's say if you draw a F, it go to Facebook. You can create any gesture you want. But obviously we also have certain like default things that's more usability. So we have like a little kind of arrow that goes up, it goes to the top of the page, you go down, just draw another arrow, go down to the page so you don't have to scroll. So our developer did some really creative things, but we thought it's not really about us because we can preload so many of them, but it's really about the user, which emphasize the brand, which is the customized, it's Dolphin, right? So as you can create on your own latte, that's your style. So it's consistent. So that was lesson number 1 when we're thinking about building the Dolphin brand. So now the second thing is press coverage. I actually was asking the CEO the other day, if you can have anyone in the world, let's say $1 million lying around, and you want one spokesperson to speak on behalf of Dolphin, who would that be? And he actually picked some actress, which I'm like, okay. But I actually found this photo. Who can tell who is this guy? Justin Bieber, right? Well, obviously, we're not going to have Justin Bieber to be our spokesperson, but he kisses the dolphin. I'm like, yeah, I'm totally using this. But of course, he never tweeted about us. There's no associate. I need to do disclaimer, All right, but at the same time, press is very important. I gone a little crazy with this slide. This over there is also a dolphin cloud, if you guys haven't seen it. So press actually been very, very important to us. In fact, I think the second month or the third month after we launched on Android market, we got our first press coverage. I think it was PC World. Was it PC World? So we didn't know, we didn't really even know who to contact. They actually somehow discovered us, didn't know. But because of that one piece of press coverage, all of a sudden we see a huge spike in terms of download. Then we realized, wow, press is very important. Before, we just sort of let's see what's going on. You sort of want to approach press, you don't know how to do it. But the first press coverage by PC World, it was completely by accident. It was not intentional. So, but we learned from that one experience that now, wow, it is very important. So let's do more of that. And then we were really, really lucky, which by the way, I think for all of you guys, doesn't matter you're doing photo app or maybe a game or whatever it is, the homework will be to find out whatever you're working on, what are your competitors? So let's say they're writers, all they write about is productivity app. That probably will be the writer that you should go after, right? Or this person's all about Angry Bird. So let's say if you do a bird-like sort of game, maybe this person want to write about it too. So there's definitely some really basic sort of low-cost thing that you should do research, because people will sort of realize you don't know what you're talking about. You can't pitch a TechCrunch person to go cover your app because this person always write about funding news and launch and all these stuff. So think about how you strategically approach writer that write about things that they care about. Don't you can't sell dog food to a cat owner, right? You just have to think about who are your target audience, not just your user, but really the press, who are the influencers. Okay, so lesson number 3 is partner up with other app developer. This is one of my absolute favorite. I don't know who took this or photoshopped this. We love to partners, right? You can see that we have a lot of add-ons and we partner up with other developer. Mainly, originally, it's about user experience. We weren't thinking about from a marketing side of things. But then we realized, wait a second, this is actually something really, really popular with mobile games. Game developers are really good at cross-promoting. They're really good at it, in fact. For app developer, that's more productivities. I realized we're actually not as, because there's a lot of logic behind each of these. It's not that you want to promote other app anyway. But we realized through add-on, we were able to build a lot of partnerships with other app developers. Sometimes you don't necessarily have to integrate technically. You can actually sort of use each other's marketing muscles. So for example, my good friend here who's sitting right here, which is Squidoo, Megan Casey, who runs Squidoo, she's actually not an app developer, but she runs a really, really large user-generated content site. So we recently just launched this last week. So Dolphin now curate and pick like the hottest app, but is on Squidoo's platform. But they already have thousands, what they call lands, a small piece of article that already talk about mobile app. So for us, it's basically we are hosting it, but we also link this Squidoo page with our Facebook fans. So we're both growing so that our base Facebook follower, and it's good for both. So this is another test that we're doing in terms of partnership. But there's a lot of creative things that we can do together. There's another thing. We're actually going to launch a box. Wait, they're not called box.net anymore. They just got box.com. So box. But another add-on on Dolphin. So when we do that, it's actually technically the two products don't necessarily integrate as much, but we're absolutely cross-promoting on our blog, on Twitter, on Facebook. Basically, tell each of our users, hey, now there's Dolphin, check out box add-on, and you can actually save all your files to your Box account through Dolphin. And the other way around, the Box user find out that, oh, wow, cool, I didn't know that if I'm on Android, I can save all these files directly. And so it's good in terms of user acquisition for both sides. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, next thing is engage users. I don't know if you guys can tell this is a dolphin tattoo on the waist. But anyway, so there's a lot of different ways of engaging users. So let's say you put in all this effort, get all these downloads. But more importantly, there's this whole concept about building community. Your first 1,000 users pretty much set the tone of the rest of the user base. What that means is if your first 1,000 users love you, they will continue, want to support, and really become your evangelists for you to grow furthermore. So a few ways for us to continue to engage, because we realize, great, you downloaded it. Now, how can we continue to communicate? It's hard to send emails and all that. So this is one example that we did today. In fact, we are please vote for us, by the way. It's midnight for the TechCrunch Crunchy Award, the best mobile browser. So we asked our user to vote for us. And it's completely okay because we're human too. We want to win. So please help us to win this award. So sometimes we don't do it every day, but because otherwise it would get annoying because you want the user experience about the users, not about you. But sometimes people will get really excited just to be part of us in this effort. So in this case, we basically did about 12 hours or so. Hey, please vote for us. Please help us. We want to be the best mobile app for the year. And we got, surprisingly, just a lot of feedback, because it's basically a tweet. So they just sent out a lot of tweets, which I'll show you a couple of tweets that they did as well. And another example, this is an Evernote example. And a lot of time, this is actually iOS. I took the screenshot. But you can do push notification to encourage people to rate for you. And you have to definitely do this with care, because it can get really annoying. But sometimes, think about when, now, for me, every single time I get any notification, I take a screenshot for every single app that I ever download, because then it gives me idea. And also think about the frequency of, if you want to do this kind of thing, how often should you do it? I think every apps, or actually mobile game do this all the time for people to come back. So you have to do it with elegance, but it's definitely a lot of app developers do it. All right, number 5 is social media. We are actually fairly good at it, but at the same time, we run 2 or 3 campaigns every week just to try out different things. Sometimes it fails, sometimes nobody cares about it. Sometimes we actually get yelled at and basically say, what the hell are you doing? We do a lot of different things, but one of the things that was very successful that we do often, and I actually recently learned from some of my friends as well. Right now, this is actually a screenshot that you can't really see the whole thing. But anyway, if you go to our page, we have about 33,000 Facebook fans now. One of the statistics, which is even more important than the actual total number of fans, is the active sort of activities, active number. How many people actually come back and do things? Just like you install an app, but if they don't come back and interact with you, it's a waste of time, right? So Facebook actually have that number as well. Today we're about 3,000 in terms of active user, means they commented, they like, or they do something on our Facebook page. So about 10% or so, and that's actually increased a lot, because I think last week was like 400. So there's definitely that ratio as well. But why do we do this? Well, a few things. First, we want to be real people behind Dolphin Browser. So we just went to Japan. We did like a whole campaign. Like localization is a completely different story, which there's a lot of work which I love to share as well. But we went to Japan and we did like all these events, and we have these dolphin shirt like this one. I gave it to some of the users. We took a lot of pictures. We want to re-engage the users with real people. So a lot of times, what we're testing a lot on our Facebook page, and why we do it, because we don't want to be just another, build another very cool, whatever app. We wanted people to be part of the brand, to feel like who we are, more than just the product itself. So we're testing with kind of real people face-to-face. We're actually doing a happy hour on Thursday. We want to meet the user. We want to talk to them. We want to, not just behind email or tweets or Facebook, we want to show real pictures. So that's one thing. But a lot of times we also want to be the evangelist for the community. So we pick a lot of articles. And we do really similar thing as well on Twitter and on Facebook. And sometimes we'll reference that back to in the product itself and say, hey, these are the most tweeted, let's say, things that are most tweeted things through Dolphin Browser, shared by Dolphin Browser, and kind of feed it back to the user. So we can create not just about the product, but the content, which is really what the browser is about. It's the content that you consume, so we want to share it back with the community. And another thing that we do a lot, I don't know if you guys I use TweetDeck, and I look at it like every day, which is not just people tweet at us, but also people that mention, but they didn't know about our handle, but it just say Dolphin, like say space browser. Or everyone actually should have a Google Alert. You guys know Google Alerts. Just have you get an email every day to figure out who is talking about you. Because maybe some bloggers already write about your app and you have no idea. Once you're aware, you should definitely email them and say thank you for writing about us and build that relationship. But with this, we basically do a couple things. So you see from the top, there are people starting to write in other languages. I have no idea what they're talking about. But let's say I just nominate Dolphin Browser for the best mobile application. That's for the Crunchy. That's the campaign that we're running right now. And some of the people absolutely help with that. But a lot of time, couple other things. So we're running another campaign. We want to give out the T-shirt, right? So we run a campaign. I'm not on Facebook. How can I get the T-shirt? So there's a lot of conversation around that. And another thing that we started doing recently is that learning from like Dell and Zappos, like this other non-mobile brand, they actually start doing customer service on Twitter as well. So we actually just opened a brand new Dolphin Cares Twitter account. So when we go on and look at any sort of user questions on Twitter, because maybe sometimes people are just frustrated. Hey, how come like nothing works? And then we have to address it and say, hey, this is how you actually use our product. But we want to separate the conversation. One is all about product announcement, marketing campaign, and the other one is all about answering product questions. So we actually have two now. And now the crazy thing is we started to get really serious about other countries as well. So we now official language. We actually have about 18 languages that all 18 of these, some of our core fans from like Russia started translating for us and we had no idea. So we're very thankful for that. But then at the same time, to really seriously market to other countries, all of these we have to think about. So we launched recently in China, Japan, and Korea. Now we're like, shoot, like we start looking at these tweets in Japanese, how are we gonna write back? We can't even do that. So that's another sort of headache that we have to think about. It's not just about translate. By the way, there's tons of agencies that do translation, app translation and description translation. Very, very quick that you can get that done. But that's not even the point. The point is, how do you actually do marketing afterwards? How do you do customer service? How do you communicate? That's now we are facing a completely different challenge now. All right, so 2 more lessons really quick is the transition from Android to iOS. How many of you actually have an iOS app? Okay, a few. So we actually did it, obviously started in Android. So we decided, you know what, maybe it's time. We got a little bit of funding. So we decided, you know, maybe we should invest, which is, you know, we had to hire new people. It's completely different sets of skills. So we have the team, we build iOS, which is really maybe 1/10 of the functionality compared to our Android apps, because Android is a lot more flexible to develop. So when we get to iOS, it was interesting. Again, we start with nothing. We didn't know how to market on iOS. We don't know anything. The algorithm is different, and which Don's going to talk about all that. I want to learn that as well. So the thinking we have was, okay, we don't really know about this new market, but what we do know is we have really, really strong fans. So what we did was a really sort of fun campaign. We realized, well, we don't want our it's all Android users that we have. We can't ask them to go download iOS because they probably don't even have the device. So it wouldn't make any sense. But on the other hand, what's interesting is that we want to sort of ask for help to sort of celebrate our launch. So what we did was a raffle campaign. So we actually did a giveaway of an iPhone 4. And we basically say the way for you to enter this raffle is to tweet. So what we did was they have to be like a particular sort of format. Obviously, hashtag Dolphin iPhone, and they have to explain to us why they love Dolphin so much. So this one literally say, I love Dolphin Browser, the best Android browser, even uninstall the default. Congrats to the iPhone launch. So we sort of asked the user for help. We didn't ask them to download it, but instead we asked them to have to include certain thing in that tweet. And within 5 days, we actually generate 10,000 tweets with this campaign. Basically 10,000 I love Dolphin tweet. It was awesome. This is just a few of them that I took out, which I thought is so cool. But more importantly, what I also didn't realize for iOS is some other things I didn't know before. There's a lot of recommendation app on iOS. So if you get a lot of tweet, even without paying, they will sort of like put your app on the front page of these recommendations. Am I making any sense? So there's a lot of those app recommendation apps, right? So if it's highly tweeted, it's actually something that people will see it anyway. So it was really useful for us, but it was an accident. Like we didn't know that we can do this. And now obviously we want to repeat it. But the bad thing with marketing is that once you use it once, you can't do it again within such a short time. Otherwise the user gets sick of you, right? So you have to be very careful when you pick and choose. Okay, and have to be really creative, because people were, hey, you're doing the same thing this other guy is doing. So you have to think about how do you kind of shape it and word it correctly so that it doesn't get negative effect. We have launched many other ones that sort of like we thought it would be a huge deal, but compared to this, which is a really low cost, basically no money. I mean, it was the money to buy the iPhone. That was expensive. But other than that, it wasn't like we hired or like did any special thing like behind the back. It was just a pure raffle campaign, just like you do on the radio. Last but not least, one thing that is really, really useful for us, which I will show you, is video. Video actually doesn't have to be high cost. So when we launched on iOS, we decided, you know what? So one thing before I show all these, why video, one of the things that we learned from sort of our press experience was that press actually love to include video of how your app work in their blog post. So even though it doesn't have to look like this, I'm just really anal, so I like to be a specific way. But it really is about things that is visual, because it helps them to increase their readership. So if you have any video, even though it's not perfectly done, it's still good to send along, to include a video in sort of your pitch emails and whatnot, because very likely they will include that in their write-up. So this one, which included at least like 10, 20 different blog posts when we launched the iOS version. So with this our whole concept is that we pick a feature, which is gesture, to be the highlight for our app. And the different way of how this is Dolphin Translate, you can translate to different languages. And this like you can shiny shake, you can change and just shake it to different tab. And the way how a webzine works. And at the end, you have a little kid's hand. Even the kids can do it. So that's sort of like our thinking. So with this, it's really, really short, about 30, 40 seconds or so. Now, like I have a lot of friends, doesn't matter, like a lot of app developer friends. Pretty much every single one of them will call me up and say, hey, I want to do a video. Like, what should we do? In fact, another friend of mine going to launch their app, and I can't say it, on Thursday. And I basically, one of my friends borrowed our cats and have the cats to play with the app. Even the cats can do it. But we're not going to do it for Dolphin. Obviously, I love animals, if you can't tell. But there's many, many creative ways to sort of like express what you really love and sort of make fun of it. I mean, this one is actually sort of serious, but I think sometimes if it's sort of like a funny, sort of a joke, people want to watch it even more. So there's a lot of creative way to sort of bring out your app and get people to watch it more. With that, that's the end of sort of my 7 tips. So thank you.
Thank you.